We got some defensive questions coming up this offseason. We just talked about Adrian Amos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what are your big question marks for this year? I just started like writing some thoughts down here. What like Eric Stokes is coming back. Is Rasul
Yep.
Douglas or Eric Stokes going to be the second guy? Is Rasul Douglas like is he a top level cornerback or is he a guy that happened to have a ton of picks when we picked him off the street?
Yeah.
Right?
He is that factually. That's what happened. He got him
No,
off the
but
street.
is he more than that? Right? Because second, like last year, let's be honest, Jair Alexander is an all pro. Period. He's the best player on defense. I mean, maybe if Gary's healthy, maybe we can start different positions, but same impact on the game. Jair Alexander is the best player on that defense right now, going into the last game of last season. But if a team wants to throw, they're throwing to Rasul Douglas. Now, if a team wants to throw next year, they're going to throw to Eric Stokes or one or if or. But who's going to take that spot? Who's going to own it? Because Eric Stokes wasn't lighting the world on fire. He wasn't playing bad, but he wasn't lighting the world on fire when he got hurt. And so now, like, how's that competition going to go? And then what are they going to do with that third player? Maybe that's why they think Darnell Savage goes from nickel corner back to safety because they're going to have one of those two guys who's going to play it.
Yeah, I'll say the first thing, I'm looking at a roster of 21 defensive backs for the Packers right now.
Wow.
So 21 tells me competition is in the room. I mean, we probably got Big Ten players, the SEC players, the ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, all in the room. So from just that right there, inventory is who's the best men in this room that's going to step up to two starting corners and free safety, strong safety. We need 4 guys. Who's going to be those 4 guys after the guys we already mentioned? So they bring in Jonathan Owens from the Texans to put that competition more.
Jonathan
Here we
Owens
go.
can play. He can
Yeah,
play.
Owens
I watched him
was
last
a
year.
starter, was a player at the Texans. We're bringing him in the room too. Because if you didn't do that, I know you did it. I know I did it. When new running backs came in the room, my radar was I already knew they were coming in the room. So I'm not nervous. I'm not like worried as a player in that position because I already did my homework on them. I know they're coming in. They're doing this to wrap up the competition. So if you ain't about that competition life, then from those player standpoints, then you're gonna exit yourself out stage left very fast.
The only guy in that room who isn't worried is Jair Alexander.
No, he's that dude. I already said that. He's that dude.
Yeah, the only guy who let me rephrase that then. The only person who shouldn't be worried. Everybody else in that room, if they're like, "Oh, I don't care who they bring in," I'd be like, "You should care.
You better be thinking about it.
Not a single one of the rest of those guys.
Take notes.
Right? They can all be replaced. There's only one guy in that room who can't be replaced. You know what I mean?
Yep. Number 23. 23. Yep. You could put whatever you want, a circle around him, a star next to his name. That number right now, due to injury. Other than that, that's the only thing that can take him out is injury.
Outside of that, he's a really good player.
Valentine, all those guys, Hopper. They need to come with their lunch pails, learn that, come out there with that game showing off now, and then finishing in justification come training camp in July, August, to say to this team, okay, I'm your number 5 swing man. I'm going to be number 6 or 7 because we need the top 8 guys to be on that field in their rotation. So that's what those defensive coordinator coaches are looking at.
We'll be super interested to see who plays the safety position. So see those two guys are. The other thing is who's the second the defensive lineman. So Mean Dean Lowry is gone. Obviously, they drafted Wyatt, first round pick last year. We have Reeds. We have guys that can play there. Do we have guys that can dominate there? Is Wyatt going to transition into an athlete who can play against rookie guards, who plays a little bit tall, to a second-year guy who takes that big jump that everybody's hoping for, that turns into a guy that can eat up space, a guy that can penetrate and kind of play the run and the pass equally well? Because Kenny Clark is great. Kenny Clark is a nose tackle. You really could use a penetrating 3 technique in that rotation. Because what are the cool thing about off or defensive lines is if you have a guy that's really good, like Kenny Clark is good enough for you have to game plan against him.
Right.
And that should benefit the next guy, right? And like, for example, Warren Sapp was so good, you had to game plan against Warren. But he never had another guy next to him, Rice on the outside, but I'm talking about on the inside. He never had another guy that we cared about. Right. I forgot who they had before. It was a 290-pound, 285-pound white guy. He was like 6'1". He was a good player, but nobody's worried about
Chris Hovan.
No, okay. So I'm talking about before Chris Hovan. I'm talking about the 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001. Then they drafted
wasn't
this dude,
playing there.
AGI. Yeah. This
I
dude
wasn't
is-
playing a whole lot of snaps then, so no.
this dude, when he retired, he dropped 100 pounds and he became a marathon runner. So even if I picked his name,
Oh, I know. I've heard of that guy.
Yeah. So
what are you talking about now? I know exactly what you're talking about. I
so
just can't think of his name. Dang
yeah,
it.
not bad mouthing him, but you know, he's not that guy, right? And then they
Correct.
brought in. So what did they do? They drafted Booger McFarland, I think, first round
Yep.
pick out of LSU. But
Yep.
Booger wasn't that guy either. So Booger was just a guy. He was just a body.
He
right?
could take space. That was probably.
Well, what I'm saying is,
And he occupied people.
We're not.
I really did.
If you said, "Hey, Marco, Mike, one of us, we're going to put 2 on Warren, and you got to deal with the other guy," no problem. Not a big deal. Not an issue, right? Whereas if they would have had, I don't know, you know, it's like when you have Chris Jenkins, Mike Rucker, Chris Jenkins, you know, Buckner and Peppers. It's like Buckner's the only guy. Buckner's the only guy you aren't going like, oh man, we got problems everywhere, right? They got 3 guys that are all pro. So that's what I'm saying, right? So even though if Kenny gets doubled, that means we got to free up the 3 technique because they still have to chip off for Rashawn Gary when he gets healthy.
Yeah. I mean,
there's options there. It's just like that guy has. There's probably not a bigger opportunity to take a jump from year 1 to year 2 than Wyatt, just simply because when healthy, this line creates a situation where you need 2 people to be doubled at all times.
Yeah, and you want to create that problem. All linemen don't like that. I know that for a fact, knowing you guys. But yeah, having the young guys, they got right behind Kenny, even though it's just the OTA depth chart here. Carl Brooks, you got then Kobe Wooden and Jason Lewin. You don't know, because they're all rookies. You got those 3 right there, Carl, Kobe, and Jason, all rookies that then obviously learning scheme, learning their footwork, learning how to exist in the new situation they're in, being in a Green Bay Packer uniform. So you could probably not count them out, but they're learning right now. They're processing. There's a lot going on in that brain other than saying, I'm going to be the starter right now. But a guy that Devontae, you got Chris Slayton who has some snaps too, but to have Kenny out at the end, where he most likely is, like he's an inside guy where he wants to create problems. So you just got to be smart on who you're going to have in that rotation to support Kenny when he needs to take those breaks, because obviously I've been saying this the whole show is you got that next man up. Who's going to be that best guy after? Because we already know he's a Pro Bowler in terms of Kenny Clark and Devontae potentially, but he's got to work for it.
A lot of people talk about Van Ness moving inside. Maybe they do that in nickel, but he's not. He's not a mainstay. He's not a starting player in there. He's just not. He's not 275 pounds. That's unrealistic. Devondre Campbell took a step back last year, I think, in his play. He was an All-Pro, obviously, 2 years ago. Had some injuries last year that kept him out, but even when he came back, wasn't quite as effective. And listen, he's a guy that was a journeyman. He found the right system. I don't know if he did something different in his training, his preparation. The season before 2 years ago, I know that he was adamant about needing to play one position, not trying to be a jack of all trades. So if he can get back to that mindset, that'll be huge. But I think the other thing there is Quay Walker. And everybody wants to talk about, he popped off a little bit and got kicked out of a game. Quay Walker needs to be a more physical player at the point of attack for this Packers team to be a good run defense. And that is going to be something that, like, you have to address, 3 months ago as the offseason started, like, hey, this is the number one thing that you don't do well, that you need to do well. Because if you can get this with your athletic talent, we can go a long ways.
Yeah, and the physical and then the mental, the experience, watching film, getting with somebody, if it's the coach, if it's a veteran, what do I need to do better, in terms of my technique? Obviously, we saw his reaction. He was either too aggressive or not enough. So finding that line of making sure he reacts properly to every play recognition once that ball is snapped, to a run play, to the run play action pass, whatever that reaction is, that he reacts properly, because that's what I saw. False stepping, a lot that he did. We had the speed and talent, but when you're young, that speed just gets you there. It could get you in the wrong place very fast, basically what happened with him throughout the last season. So hopefully he can learn from that to then bring his game together for basically the reasons why, one of the reasons why he was drafted, because of his speed, but then that experience, that knowledge up here, using his mind more than, more reacting than doing thinking in the practice, where he could then be, I'll say, a better reactor to all his game plays.
Yeah, I think when you talk about, like, when we say when we say somebody needs to become a more physical player, like if you're a football player, if you played linebacker in the National Football League, you're physical. You're a physical player.
Easy.
The difference is if you have confidence that you can diagnose plays, that you can be on the front foot, that you can do the attacking at the guard level, at the center level, you can hit the holes, if you can attack fullbacks because you're diagnosing plays, your speed of thought is faster. Then to the general public on tape, you now become a more physical player because you're first to the punch. You see what I mean? So it's not that we're not sitting here like you and I aren't saying like, oh man, this guy's a whatever. It's like he's a physical player, but as you process information better, as you become more comfortable with what you're supposed to be doing and how you do it, it will appear because you get to the punch first that you'll be a more physical athlete. And that's exactly, I think we're saying the same thing, right? That's what he needs to do.
Exactly. Bang, bam, boom.
AG, of all those guys, oftentimes you say the defense takes the persona of an individual athlete. I talked about Warren Sapp. I talked about John Randall. Obviously Cam Hayward in Pittsburgh is a name that would come up for me. You also talk about sometimes the defensive coordinator is the guy that kind of sets the tone. Who on this defense are you going like, man, I wish they would all be like that guy. I want everybody to just like, I want that persona to take over this defense. Do we know enough about these guys to say anybody?
I say, I have two guys actually. Mm-hmm. One is Rashard Gary, and then number two would be Zaire Alexander.
Yeah,
it's having their mindset because it's not just about the end game mindset; it's the preparation mindset too. Because I know Zaire takes his time in practice to study up the guys he's going to face every week. What their personalities are, what their favorite routes are, how they come off the ball. Their first move. And I'm pretty sure Rashard's doing the same thing. And if he's not, he better start doing it now. And every player needs to be doing that. Because I knew every linebacker's false step. I knew that if I was running the ball to the right, what Urlacher, how he would run that, how he would play me. And he would either go real fast to the edge or he would try to slow play me. So he tried to protect my me coming back. So I knew that about him. And when I saw him do one or the other, if I saw him slow play me, then I'm taking to the edge. So it's just those players having that mindset of what I got to do to win every time I play against a player that's going to be in front of me once the regular season get here. But in practice, obviously OTAs now getting ready for training camp. What is the position? I mean, what is the player I need to be come in that training camp to make sure I'm gonna be either in the rotation or the starter?
I think it was both. Let's can't argue with him, sir. I would probably go with Kenny. I'd probably go with Kenny just because he's quiet, goes about his business. He's a veteran leader in that room already. I just you can tell he's a guy. Listen, he just does dirty work, man. He's a water carrier.
Yeah,
he's a water carrier for this team. He's not flashy. In my experience, Jaire Alexander is unique. He's a unicorn. He's a unicorn because not a lot of guys can. And I think maybe you have to do this. Some of the top guys at cornerback historically have been like he is. He's very, it's like, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Yeah, that's normal.
That's
not a mark against him at all.
No, it's not at all. But it doesn't play with everybody. True. It doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't like there's a lot of guys that'll get around a guy like Jaire Alexander and say, he's so good. I want to be like him. I'm going to act like that. And they haven't put in the time that he's put.
You got to put in that work. So that's why he acts like that.
Yeah, you got a lot of guys that have false bravado. I'm not saying that we have that on the Packers. I'm just saying that is a thing. But what I love about Kenny is Kenny has these moments of he's getting double team, he's fighting, and then they give him a free like one-on-one, and he just destroys the center. He throws a guy on the ground. He physically dominates people. He does his celebrating with his team. Everything's about the group. I love that. I love that what that represents for this team. So that would be my pick. I don't think any of those guys are wrong by any means. I'm a huge Kenny Clark fan.